So it's been a while since I've built a tutorial video, but I'm back on it now, and I've been recently inspired by the new season of Fortnite, which is Marvel themed, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a cosplay safe Mjolnir or Thor's hammer. Before this video starts, make sure that you subscribe to this channel to keep an eye out for future videos, and if you can hit the notification bell as well, that would be great. Let's get cracking. So I'm going to start by cutting out the templates that I've printed. The side parts of these have got a couple of detail lines that need to be cut out as well. That just makes it easier to then trace those onto the foam later. Speaking of foam, I'm using a 10mm thick EVA floor mat. This is from Halfords. You can get a pack of 6 for 10 quid. And I'm tracing around my pieces using the back of a knife rather than a pen, because sometimes the Sharpie ink will show through your paint. Using a very sharp knife, I cut almost all of these parts out at a bevel, about a 45-degree angle. The only parts that aren't cut out at this angle and are cut straight are the bits where the edge of the hammer join up to the main body of the hammer. But you'll be able to see this later on as I put it together. So these bits here are about 45 degrees, and that's the kind of angle you're going to want. Now this circle piece that goes on the top is too thick. You could use thinner foam, but what I do is I just take my knife and I cut that about a third of the way down, gradually around the edge, and then once I've got that cut through enough to fit the blade so it disappears into that gap, I then just saw it straight through. We've got a nice thin piece to go on top there for that decorative disc on the top there. Now all the parts are cut out. I'm going to use some electrical tape. You can use any tape you like, but I like to use electrical tape. It's nice and sticky, doesn't leave any sticky residue behind or anything. And I'm sticking on the angled pieces to the end of the hammer, making sure I cover every little bit of the seam. This is very important. You must cover every little bit of the seam if you're going to glue it together like this. I'm going to do the same thing for the main body of the hammer. You can see which bits go where using the instructions on the one of the first pages. It's got a layout of all the pieces showing which orientation they go round in as well. It's very important that you get the side detail right, otherwise it'll be upside down. Make sure it closes up nicely. I'm going to make a hole in this by using the pipe that's going to be used as the handle. Just going to twist that back and forth, and that will cut a nice hole in there. These parts are actually inserts. They're the same length as the hammer and the same width as the beveled bit on the inside. And this will just help keep the handle nice and steady, also give it a bit of strength, give it a bit of heft as well. Now measuring, making sure it's nice and square before we go any further. And I've cut out some smaller pieces, rectangles, to go in there as well. They help stop it from being squashed. So now I'm happy that these bits line up. I'm just going to trim the edges to make sure that they're perfectly flush with the side of the hammer. And I'm going to glue those two inserts in as well. One goes in line with the hole that's at the bottom of the hammer, make sure it's nice and lined up, and the other one goes 2 over, which would be the top. Now I'm gluing these end caps from the inside. They're still taped together, all of the seams are perfectly taped up, and I'm gluing it from the inside, and I'm going to do the same thing with a hammer. So I've covered up all of the seams with the tape. I've got a couple of bits of tape at the ready, and I've got my handle too, and I'm going to put some hot glue down every single one of those joints. I've got to be very quick doing this because you don't want the glue to set before you go put it all together, so you've got to be very quick with this to make sure you've got a nice long glue stick in there. You're not going to run out halfway through. Do every single one of those as well as the edges as well that are going to join up. And then once you've got the glue on there, you've got to quickly fold that all up, get your tape ready, and then tape that edge up. And to make sure you've got that at the right angle, those edges at the correct angle, put that handle in there and move it about a bit, put those inserts in as well, make sure that's nice and square, and then leave that to set. Then glue those inserts in, all 4 sides, and then once that one's completely dry, flip it over and do the same on the other side, make sure it is dry, otherwise your glue will all run down, and then peel off all your tape. Carefully peel off all your tape, you don't want to tear any of the foam. Now it's just the end caps to glue on. Starting off with a corner, put a little bit of glue on there, and then a little bit of tape, let that one set up a little bit, and then do an edge at a time and work your way around very slowly, very carefully, making sure you get one edge completely set before you move on to the next one. Otherwise, as you glue the next one, it might warp and deform the first one you've done if the glue's not completely dry. So take your time with this bit. This bit's a bit more tricky, as you can't already have them already pre-taped into place. Once both sides are on and completely dry, carefully peel the tape off, being careful not to tear the foam. You could lightly go over the tape with a heat gun to soften the adhesive if you want to. And then any glue that's seeped out, just rub really vigorously with your finger and that will get that off. Be careful because you can actually burn your fingers doing this. I'm going to put some glue on that disc that we trimmed down, that we made nice and thin. So that's probably about 3 or 4 mil thick now. Now cutting some strips out of some vinyl. This is some brown artificial leather. Going to cut a 2-inch strip that we're going to wrap around the handle, but first of all we're going to make the loop that you can wrap around your wrist. Now this stuff isn't very strong, so I'm using an inch wide piece of nylon webbing to go inside it, and this is a 3-inch strip of vinyl that I'm wrapping around it and pinning into place, and I'm going to sew this down the middle, just one seam, to wrap that piece of vinyl and make it nice and strong. You could of course use an actual genuine piece of really thick leather to do this, but this is all I had to hand and I wanted the colours to match too. So you could sew this by hand if you wanted to. It would be very tough to try and get a needle to go through 3 layers of vinyl and a bit of webbing as well. So I'm using my sewing machine that does it a lot quicker and a lot neater than I can ever do it by hand. You could also try gluing it if you want to, but how long will the glue last, especially if you're going to start flipping the hammer around like Thor does in the movie, spinning it with the strap. Now this is going to be taped on to the handle before we wrap the handle. I've left the loop at the end there, 7 inches long. That's plenty big enough to get my hand through it. So I've taped both ends into place, making sure it's nice and straight, and then I wrap the whole thing in electrical tape. Now doing it like this, you then wrap the thing in your 2-inch bit of vinyl. It's going to make the handle slightly rectangular. If you wanted a completely rounded look, you'd also need to put a strip of webbing or artificial leather down the other sides as well. But I quite like the slightly off-round look. And then completely wrap the end in tape. Don't worry if it'll be seen, because we're going to put a decorative trim on the bottom part there, and also at the very end we're going to put a pommel. So speaking of, I'm going to trim down a 4cm tall piece of foam, so it's nice and thin, similar to the thickness that we did for that disc on the top. And I'm going to trim that to make sure that's the right size to wrap around, and we're going to heat gun it and then wrap that round, tape it into place, and then make another little piece to go in between the strap. I've cut out a couple of half circles there and then put a load of glue on the bottom and glue that into place. Do the same with that little bit that goes in between the handle as well, and that's the pommel done. Now using a wood burning tool, you can also use a soldering iron as well. We don't have one of these. Just drawing a line there, engraving a line down the piece that's going to go at the other end of the handle. I'm using a wood burner as well now to put in all of the decorative details. So the lines for these I've already traced on using the templates. This is the side of the hammer. You need a very steady hand to do this. If you do it wrong, you can't undo it. So if you're not confident in using a wood burner, maybe it's a good idea to draw these details on before you assemble the hammer. That way if you mess up a piece, you can always just cut out a new one, especially these bits on the side here. You need a very steady hand, and I practiced a few times on a couple of scrap pieces before I did it to the actual hammer. But yeah, if you want to do these to it before you assemble it, then that might be a good idea. That way if you do screw it up, you can always just do another piece, and once you've got all the pieces done, you can then assemble them. So the side detail here at the end I just made up as I went along. You can do however you like, get as intricate as you like. It's quite tricky using a wood burner, and I wanted to make sure I could repeat the pattern quite easily on all sides, all 8 sides of these. So I kept it quite simple, split it into 5 like little circles I guess, and then put a V on alternating circles, and then the same thing on the bottom. It's the same design flipped. It kind of looks like a little smiley face, I suppose, because I add little eye things, I guess. So it's kind of like a non-joined up V on the other side. A little dot in the middle, I guess you could call a nose, and then 2 little dots in between each circle. And that's the pattern I went for. Nice and simple. Did that on all sides. And then this top here is meant to be some sort of writing. I just made it up. Doesn't say anything, it's just a load of gibberish, but it looks pretty cool. And that's all the engraving done on the hammerhead. Now I'll do the same thing for the pommel. Again, I pretty much made this up as I went along. Just add in some lines and details just to give it less of a boring plain flat look. So now that's done, squirt a crap ton of glue into the hole in the hammerhead. And then just jam the handle in there, making sure you've got it twisted the right way so the strap hangs to the side. Bit of heat on this decorative piece there that goes at the base of the hammerhead. This is the bit we put that engraved line down. And that goes on the same way as the pommel. You're going to wrap that round using plenty of glue and then tape it into place. If any seeps out, don't worry, you can always get that off once it's dry. It peels off quite nicely off of the fake leather. So that's taped into place. And it's now completely built. Make sure you get rid of any excess glue that's seeped out and then seal the whole thing with a heat gun. You can tell when it's sealed because the foam changes colour as the pores in it close up. Mask off the bits you don't want painted. That's the handle and the strap. Take your time doing this because you might save a bit of time masking it up, but it'll take you forever to clean up the paint that goes over the bits you don't want to. I'm using some high viscosity silver paint. This is just acrylic paint, it's quite thick. And a brush to apply it. You could spray it if you want to. I don't seal mine with anything. I find the heat gun seals it well enough. All you need with this paint is 2 coats of the silver, going over everything, making sure to keep the brush strokes going in the same direction. I didn't push the bristles into those engraved areas. I left them as they were because they're going to be black wash later anyway. And now I've mixed a bit of black paint with that silver to get like a gunmetal colour. So after 2 goes over that with the silver, I'm going to go twice over it with this gunmetal as well. The silver base coat I think just makes it a lot more shiny. And then 1 coat of lacquer. This is automotive lacquer I picked up from Halfords. After the lacquer is completely dry, this is watered down black paint. Just brush that into those engraved areas and then wipe it over with a paper towel. Do that to all of the engraved areas. Some parts I had to go over twice once it was dry to make sure I got all the little nooks and crannies. And once that is completely dry, it will take quite a while because it's watered down. Go over it twice more with the lacquer. Once the lacquer is completely set, you can unmask it. Now some of your paint might have got underneath the masking, so I just use a baby wipe, believe it or not, that gets off the acrylic paint really well. And here it is all finished, 1 completed Thor's hammer, all made in about 3 hours using 1 foam mat and a couple of bits of leather and a PVC pipe. Pretty simple stuff. So if you like this video, make sure you subscribe to keep an eye out for future videos. Also check out the social media links in the description of this video, and be sure to hit the little notification bell as well. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and remember, you don't have to be great at making to make something great. Bye bye.